stand on the shoulders, truly. I stand on the shoulders. So I'm the sponsor in the House of the migration bill, and we will be introducing it soon. The Senate side is probably going to introduce first. I will get the bill, and I will introduce it shortly here in the next week or two. That is a plan, and hopefully I can make it before Black History Month is over. We've been a little backed up, and part of that, the part of the backup is because if those that were not following politics in the state of Minnesota, we had what was considered to be an attempted coup in the suppression of thousands of voters by my Republican colleagues that had decided that they were going to, if we came in and gave them quorum at the beginning of the session, they were going to kick out a member that had been duly elected down in the Shakopee area. So we denied that quorum until we came to a power sharing agreement. We're the only state in the country right now that has a tie in one of the chambers of their state legislators. So it's going to be 67, and we'll be sharing power as we move forward in March after a special election. So that's the holdup that we're having here at the state legislature. You know, what I want to say in this moment, and I'll be brief, is that, you know, some folks are saying we should wait and not have this conversation about reparations in the times we're in now. And that harkens back, and I was talking to some folks earlier, that harkens back to the civil rights movement. Folks will say, just wait. Just wait, it'll happen. In time, we'll let you be free. In time, we'll treat you like humans. In time, we'll treat you with some decency. And our ancestors were not going to wait for that organic moment to happen, because they were literally dying at that time that folks were saying, just give it some time. Right. Don't rush it. Don't push too hard. And I say this is the same moment here where we should not sit back. We should not listen to anyone that is saying we need to wait and wait for that perfect moment. There will never be a perfect moment, I believe, for this country to acknowledge the atrocities of slavery and genocide that has happened here to build this nation. There will never be a perfect time for that. And I truly believe that a lot of the opposition to doing reparations is because the country doesn't want to look at it, doesn't want to face the fact of just how dark and how atrocious and egregious our history was in this country, and acknowledge the harm that was done to the descendants of those folks in this country. Brother English, how you doing? There is truly a debt owed, and we are not going to stop coming, and we're not going to stop talking about it. We're not going to stop pushing until that debt is paid. You know, the sister talked about that song, and that song truly does represent where we've come from, where we are, and how we're going to have to continue to fight to get to where we want to be. I think that the Black folks have always been the conscience and the morality of this country. And so we have to continue to fight. Because when we talk about a perfect union, we have always been the conscience pushing us to get to that perfect union. Everything that we have achieved, when you look at the civil rights movement, it betters the entire country. And so at the legislature, I'm the co-chair of our Posse Caucus, and that's people of color and indigenous. And what I always tell people is that Posse Caucus issues are Minnesota issues. Those are U.S. issues, because we are in this country. We're not leaving this country. This is our country. We helped build this country.
That's right.
And so we must push these issues. And when these issues get better for us, these issues get better for everyone. Everyone. It lifts up everyone. And so that's what we're going to continue to do. That's what we're fighting for at the state legislature. We'd love to see you all there sometime. If you get up, look for us. Again, Cedric Frazier, Representative District 43A. I am the lead author of the migration bill in the House. We will continue to push forward. Treherne, thank you for bringing me in today.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to getting to know you all as a group.
My kept us, led us into the light. Keep us forever in your path, we pray. Let our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, and let our hearts get drunk with the wine of this world, we forget thee. We're shadowed beneath thine hand, and may we forever true to our God. bless everyone.
They call it another joint. The county called it. And so it's so called I'm telling you, sir, because I'm grounded in fact. I'm grounded in fact. All black now. All black now. And let me tell you, the mayor was black, 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 the drugstore was black, the doctor was black. I'm the oldest, 13 kids. Wow. 13 kids. Wow. Can you imagine that? Yeah. I got 4, and it's not anyway, no, but having seen that, I still felt the sting of segregation, and I still see the reason that we owe this, America owes this debt. America owes this debt. The scheme was saying, we gave us a check, we came back. Right. That's right. Anyway, we'll go off so I came here in September of 1959. Wow. I arrived in here.
Right there.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you to Black Lives Matter and the Council on Minnesota of African Heritage for putting on this event. I've been coming to them, I guess, almost since they were having them. Thank you to the leadership of Shahern Cruz, a very mighty force in this effort. Well, I'm Nekima Levy, and I'm a non-Jewish descendant. And for just a little while, I was a little bit taken back about being called an elder, first of all. Because my mom was still alive then, and I felt like as long as my mom is kicking it, she's the elder, I was the elder junior. Unfortunate, she passed away 3 years ago. So now I take on that banner and that badge with pride. So yes, I am an elder. Well, so the question is, how did my life be in Minnesota? Okay, well, I grew up in the Rondo neighborhood in St. Paul, which many of you may have heard about the story of the I-94 coming through our community and just totally devastating it, destroying many lives of folk that had come to this community, to Rondo, to get jobs, to raise their families, and to prosper. Unfortunate, of course, Rondo was a neighborhood that was deemed a slum, low income, just for Negroes back there then, as the map indicated. But to me, it was a community that nurtured me. Yes. They took care of me. Yes. They watched over me. They guided me, as you just heard Mr. Bill talk about values, respect. And that's the community that I grew up. It was a community that was safe. Crime, there was hardly any crime. Now, I really look at today, I hear police cars constantly, we hear of folk getting killed in our neighborhoods. When I grew up, you hardly heard any of that. We had, I think, 2 or 3 policemen, maybe 4 police officers in the neighborhood that we really knew, and we were all very close to them as well. So whenever you did something wrong, and I'll put that in air quotes, they didn't take you to jail, they took you home. Because they knew that the sentence was going to be dealt with at home, so they didn't have to worry. And I was 10 when the freeway actually came through our neighborhood and, started digging holes, started tearing down houses. I used to sit in rooms, where we could play with and the adults would gather together. Because, back then, adults and kids didn't mix. Adults got their business and stuff to talk about, and you guys would be somewhere else. But I remember hearing my parents and my aunts or my uncles talk about, oh, the city done condemned, tore down so-and-so's house. They're going to come, if you don't turn your house over, they're going to come and take it for you, forcibly take it from you. And to me, I'm not understanding any of this, what it meant. All my dads, most of my dad's brothers lived on Rock. They all owned their own homes. We even rented from one of his brothers where we lived, right on Rondo. And then when the freeway comes through, all of them had to relocate, give up their homes and look for other places to live. So, as I said, I didn't really realize the devastation and the impact and what it all meant to me as a young Black girl growing up. But I knew this much at 10. I no longer was real close with my friends because my friends, we all hung out together. We walked to school together. No school buses all the way up through high school. We walked together, played together, went to the movies, rode our bikes. So to me, I felt like I had everything I needed right in the
Who's on the panel talked a little bit about our work together. And the reality is that if I hadn't met with Nathaniel back in 2005, I don't know where I would be in terms of civil rights in Minnesota. So just to give some context, I'll just tell a little bit about my background, but then also how I got involved in what's happening here. And I still, in my spirit, after being here since 2003, I feel the fierce urgency of now. When it comes to us speaking truth to power, standing up for our rights, and demanding the change that we want to see, which of course includes reparations for the descendants of enslaved Africans.
That's right.
So just to give a little bit of background, I was born in Jackson, Mississippi in 1976. So the way I see my timeline is Dr. King was assassinated in 1968. I was born 8 years later in an environment where I didn't know and understand that history early on. I had to go and search for it because for those who are from the Deep South or who have family in the Deep South, you know that it was dangerous to talk about a lot of the things that Black folks experience. So as children, we weren't given that understanding at a young age. So I lived in Mississippi till I was about 8 years old, and my family was poor. From one generation to the next, descendants of enslaved people. When I was 8 years old, I moved to South Central LA. That was like night and day compared to growing up in Mississippi, where even though we were poor, we still felt protected. Just because of some of the Southern values. If somebody cooked a big meal, it's not just for their family. They might invite you in, to come get some food. As children, we're running outside playing. You get hungry, you pick a pear off the tree or a plum off the tree. You eat and then you just keep going. So we didn't have to worry about food insecurity as much as some of the things that we see happening today. Now, one of the things that benefited my family was, one, my grandmother was a cafeteria lady. And she obviously prepared meals for kids at school, prepared meals for all of us. She had a lot of grandkids. She had 10 kids and a lot of grandkids. But I remember at least once a month, my family would get excited and they would bring home these big boxes. And those boxes contained government subsidies, right? There was cheese in there, like a knockoff version of Velveeta. There was powdered milk, all kinds of things, right? That my
obituary, just a little bit about her life in Northfield. And just, she talks about how there were still Native people still living in Northfield, and it was just the frontier. When we think about Minnesota in the pioneer days, we don't think blackface, not in a bad way, but just, right, we don't think about black faces. That's not what comes to mind when we think about early pioneers. We were here. We've been here that long. Started towns, we were founding members of a lot of towns, and it's just been lost to history. Now, although she chose to become very active in the black community, she had these brothers. Can you tell which two are her brothers? These two. These are her brothers, Robert and George. Again, there's 10 of them total, so this is just 3 of them. Robert and George both married Norwegian women, which is really common. So imagine being one of the only black families in town. More black men came up than women, which is pretty normal, especially when, you know, people are coming to start a new life in the frontier days. There's not that many women. So a lot of the early African Americans married white women who were Norwegian, Norwegian, Swedish, and Danish, because they didn't have racial prejudice. They didn't know it. It wasn't part of their consciousness, because they were coming from a country where that wasn't a concept. But with that came some other interesting things. Imagine starting out this life and then you have children. And this is then what your children are going to be. So Marlis on the left, she is known to have been the first African American to graduate from St. Olaf College. They have the Black House at St. Olaf is called the Marlis Boone House in her honor. If anybody's ever heard of that, this is Marlis. So again, she comes from 3 people of color in North Carolina, moved with land to Minnesota, first African American to graduate from St. Olaf. This is her cousin Albert. He was sent to Canada to live with his Norwegian grandparents and to become a white passengers. They said there's nothing for you in Minnesota, get out, go to community congregations. So 1820, Missouri Compromise. That is when the Missouri Territory was founded because the state of Missouri wanted to
who really built the hill, aligning our goals to keep it real and create generational wealth for our kids. We're going to see what trigger warning is given to black bodies whose ancestors was hanging from trees and now are laying dead in the streets. We're going to know who really got soul for this work and who really got love in their hearts. We're going to know harm reduction from ourselves. We're going to hold us accountable the way our grandmothers and ancestors taught us. We're going to ask for folks to stay in the room. We're going to hold space for folks who ain't going to play the victim game. Accountability is required. We make it clear that we don't want no pretenders or infiltrators. We're going to kick them out for being perpetrators. We got all the power when we stand together. I was late to the I'm black and I'm proud and Negroes with guns, but I'm here now. I'm here with hope that I'm on time for this, the uprising, the by any means necessary seminars. I got my bulletproof vest protecting my chest. I hope and I pray that the folks to my left and my right watch my back while I got their front. And they got my front while I watch our back. It's my mind the opposition wants. It's my flesh they want to feast on. And I'll be damned if we go back to serving black bodies next to the dinner rolls. I'll be dumb if they steal my mind too. If I end up on the menu, I'll be damned if I stand on that front line ready to die and I lose. Am I on time today? To cry today? To be held with love, understanding, and trust to push forward this work? I hope and I pray that the people be rooted in love, that we always win, that the folks be held accountable for what they've done. I hope I'm on time today. Too many of us was too late for everything else. Can we be on time and on the same side today?
So that is going to be much of my presentation. So policing in America, it was instituted to protect and advance white supremacy. We can trace the roots of law Just go to the next page, Brother English. Right at the top, you see this, it's an oath. And it says, I, patroller's name, do swear that I will, as searcher for guns, swords, and other weapons among the slaves in my district, faithfully and as privately as I can discharge the trust response to me, reposed in me, as the law directs to the best of my power, so help me God. These are people who literally, as you see today, are using Christianity as a basis for evil. So it was done back then and is still being done today. Slave patrols was first formed in 1704 in South Carolina. Patrols lasted over 150 years, only technically ending with the abolition of slavery during the Civil War. First formed in 1704 in South Carolina. Technically ending with the abolition of slavery during the Civil War. The American South relied almost exclusively on slave labor, and white Southerners lived in near constant fear of slave rebellions disrupting the economic status quo. And so, as I shared, that is white supremacy. America wants to uphold the wealth of white supremacy. Next slide. Slave patrol versus today's
doing one-on-one support families, helping navigate the education system. And I just kept saying, there's something wrong with this EBD label. There's something wrong with all of a sudden our kids are constantly getting kicked out. There's something wrong with our academic outcomes always being at the bottom. Go ahead. It's called, emotional behavior disorder.
Okay.
Now, it's all in the title, emotional behavior disorder. All right, we'll settle, we'll melt on that. Statewide proficiency rates when it comes to literacy across the state is 31 cents for Black Minnesotans compared to 58%. In Minneapolis public schools, it's 19% versus 74% literacy rate. There's a reading war happening right now, and it's called balanced literacy versus structured literacy. I won't get into that, but if you want to learn what that is, there's a podcast called Sold a Story by Emily Hanford, and she sort of outlines the reading wars and how we are where we are. And if it wasn't for those percentages of white kids that weren't learning how to read, because the old time when Black kids couldn't learn how to read, it was poverty, it was racism. Somehow with all the barriers that we faced, even though we're still here, we lived through the transatlantic slave trade, we lived through enslavement, we lived through Jim Crow, we lived through mass incarceration, but for some reason we couldn't manage to learn how to read. So that's been the myth until these white parents who had kids who also couldn't read started fighting this reading war. These statistics underscore the urgent need for targeted interventions to address systemic inequities contributing to disparities. And those inequities are school discipline, as I spoke about, the overly labeling of Black children with emotional behavior disorder, a lot of white teachers, a lot of women in the teaching profession. The teaching profession in Minnesota is 96% white women. Our curriculum, and then the culture at the school. And so when you think about, for me, when I think about what reparations for education looks like, there's a woman in the urban education space, Lori Ladson-Billings, who talks about an education debt that is owed. We've talked about Martin Luther King saying that the check that was given to us came back in sufficient funds. There's also an education debt that Lori Ladson-Billings talks about. And when we talk about the historical context of systemic racial barriers in education, the date 1619 I'm going to use, and